Hey, this is the Breakthrough Podcast. We're chilling out and talking about whatever. I'm Jake, and I'm joined by my two good friends. One of them is Ryan, and one of them is Eric. Eric, however, this episode will be impersonating someone who is silent and invisible. Yeah, you're doing great,
Um,
Eric.
no, he's not here, and I can't. If you're watching the visual version, you'll notice that we're both looking at no one, and also his shadow is just there, and also so is his cup.
It's an interesting
Actu-
interview.
yeah, well, actually, no. Since he's not here, Since he's not here, we have to take away his cup of mango nectar that's usually there. I think that's the big. Besides him not being there, that's the other big symbol that he's not actually here.
The
So
mango
yeah,
juice.
we're gonna do an episode without him, because he decided to be a cool guy and not join us because he thinks he's better than us.
That's probably why.
Yeah, freaking jerk. Why he left us.
What a guy.
So anyway, before we started this podcast, we were talking about various language things, and I was hoping that possibly, if we still have enough fuel in the tank to continue that train of thought, that's pretty cool. I think I'm kind of proud
Choo
of that.
choo, brother.
So that's a great segue into the fact that we're talking about language, because we were just talking about that. But I'm trying to think of like things in order to continue that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about how languages change over time. I mean, when
Yeah.
English changes, I feel like the official rule of English changes very little, even though people talk differently a whole lot. So if you actually look up what things are, they're different than what people generally say. Like written formal English is a pretty different language than what people actually speak, which is fairly unique, I think.
Yeah, but then you come onto the conversation of, do changes in spoken language, are they considered slang, or is it just a change to the spoken language? And if it is a change to the spoken language, that means at some point it could result in a change to the written language as well, which happens with things like internet comments and things like that. People using the wrong there when they should have used a different there, things like that. So, okay, yeah, well, first of all, would a change to the spoken language be considered slang, or is it a change to English as a whole?
I mean, if enough people say it, then the old way is the new slang, right? Just whatever most people don't say is slang now, right?
I thought slang was considered some kind of colloquialism of the language, honestly.
I couldn't tell you. I don't even know if slang is a universal thing across different languages. In English, I just interpret it as what most people don't say, as a small section of something, you know? Like saying, hey, what's up, is slang. Because not very many people say that. Most people would say, hey, how are you doing? But that's probably slang at some other different point in history.
Well, then does that mean that anyone who has a very specific way of speaking, does that become that person's personal slang? Or is that,
Yeah,
must just
pretty
be the
much.
way that someone speaks, right?
Well, I think about old British English, traditional, fancy way, was when you're talking to someone, you never ask them a question because you never want to seem like you're prying. So if you're saying, "How are you doing?" you say, "You look like you're doing well today." You don't actually ask a question ever.
Is that actually true?
From my knowledge, yes. I don't know. I don't think that's current. I think that's old.
I guess I don't know enough about Old English or formal English to know much about
Yeah.
it. I spec into different languages,
So,
you see.
so given we're a derivation of British English, is all of question asking and conversation slang?
But questions are such a foundation of the English. It's a foundation of any language. I can't
yeah.
imagine it being considered
in
slang to
conversation.
ask a question.
It's rude.
In
To
conversation,
pry.
it's rude to pry. Well, okay. Well, is it? Okay. What about a situation where someone seems down and you say, "Hey, are you okay?" That sounds a lot better than saying, "Hey, you look pretty terrible right now."
You say you seem to be having a rough time.
You seem to have. That's better, but
You're
I
supposed
think
to very politely comment on it, and then they can talk if they want. There's no pressure because a question wasn't asked.
guess. I guess, yeah, then there's no obligation for the other person to answer and talk about what they're talking about. Because then, if someone says that they are, if you ask, "Are you okay?" and then someone doesn't want to talk about it, you're kind of left
Yeah.
at a sort of impasse.
Yeah,
It
and
becomes
stop the
awkward.
conversation.
It does. Yeah, you're right.
The person says, "You seem like you're having a very busy day," and then they're like, "Yeah, I am." You know,
But
if they
okay,
want to,
if
they go
it's,
on as much
I
as they want.
guess they can if they want to, but if they don't say anything, that still results in just an awkward silence, kind of an awkward situation,
Oh
because
yeah.
now they're like, you say, "Man, you look like you've had a busy day," and they say, "Yeah," and then you
Mhm.
both are left in silence because the other person refused to elaborate.
Oh yeah. I don't know how much of it is effective. I'm just saying what I interpret the intent.
Although that makes me think that someone that could be, yeah, they don't want to talk about it because they don't feel like they want to, or they don't want to open up an old wound or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess if in the right context, if it's someone that they trust, they would definitely open up a little bit more and say like, "Yeah, I had
Mhm.
to do this thing, and then I had to do this other thing," and you have a conversation, and perhaps some amount of consolation happens, or just someone vents, because you don't need to console someone if they're down. Sometimes being down, sometimes when someone is down, you just gotta listen to what's keeping them down, and that's sometimes all that someone needs.
Yeah.
Some people don't get that.
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Different language than mine, different time period than mine.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's see. Um, we were talking about how. Okay, what do you think about the mispronunciation of someone's name then?
Mispronunciation of someone's name.
Yeah. So like
I
when.
do I do think that's something different because that's proper noun. I think a proper noun you need to adhere to
Okay.
because that is a disservice to a person or a thing.
Hmm. So, well, what happens when several factors happen? I might get into a story if we reach this point, but say that a teacher mispronounces a name,
Yeah.
and the person whose name it is doesn't correct them, and if the person leaves it alone for too long, that becomes the name that they're known by everyone in, say, their class, their year, or
Yeah.
everything. So, does that...
I mean, that's rough for that person, but the way to prevent it is to correct them, unfortunately.
It is.
Regardless if that's on the person not knowing how to pronounce the name or on the person for not correcting them, it's two ways.
Yeah.
It's not a great situation.
There are a bunch of factors that can go into this that I think about, besides those things. I mean, I've already said a bunch of factors, but there are also more factors than those previous factors
Even
that I
more.
mentioned. Yes, well, the thing is that, a situation and the way that a situation ends up transpiring can be the result of many different factors going a very specific way. Because, there's always the reason why the person doesn't correct anyone. Say they have a foreign name.
Yeah.
Because, we have a lot of international students or people who immigrate into the US and they go to school here and they have a name that is not a typical Western English name, right?
Yeah.
And so they come in and, they get their name mispronounced there's a bunch of people who are like that. I remember, meeting or hearing their name or the name they're listed on the register as. And, some people will be like, they say, you hear some foreign name, and then they say, "Oh, wait, no, I go by Edmund," or some name, you're like, "Okay, so you're Edmund." That's an easy one, because now people know, because when you speak up, you're like, "That's the name that's on my register, but I am typically known as Edmund, Joey,"
Yeah, if the
I don't
person
know.
wants to correct it into a more common name, that's on them.
Yeah.
I guess to me it's 100% the owner of the name's will should be the
Mhm.
biggest consideration.
Yeah, but what if someone's will is deteriorated is where they don't even bother because they think it's a lost cause?
Well, that's a
And
cow bummer, dude.
I was about to say, that is a cow bummer, dude. It is
Pretty
kind of
much.
unfortunate because then I had a friend like this in high school. I guess we're getting into story time. We hit it, and also I just wanted to talk about this.
Uh-oh, Ryan's a child again.
No, well, yeah, I was a child. Okay, so back to
I was never a child.
harkening back to to my moody high school days as I was. As you know from previous episode, I was an edgy goth kid, but I didn't look it. I just was in it on the inside, and I was consumed by darkness.
Rock on, feed off the darkness.
Yeah. However, even though I was consumed by the darkness, I was still empathetic and sympathetic towards other people for various situations. One of those being that, so I went to, there was a guy in one of my classes, and he ended up being also in my, I guess you would kind of call it a homeroom kind of class, the advisory classes that we had in high school. I'm not sure if you had an advisory class like we did.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we had like a homeroom-esque kind of thing. You're talking about elementary school, right?
No, high school.
High school? No, I
Yeah.
didn't have. I actually didn't have a homeroom in high school.
What about an advisory class or something? Advocacy? Anything
No,
of that sort?
English, math.
Oh, okay.
What are you on about? This is interesting.
Okay, well, I guess in order to preface this, because I guess you didn't have this similar thing.
This is a thing in high schools, is
It-
having a homeroom.
That's the closest thing that I can liken it to.
I had a freshman class that was like, but it was more about life skills, right? It was like about learning how to fill out taxes and using like measuring implements and stuff like that.
I don't even know if that was something we did in that class. I'm not entirely. I
So
don't
this
know
was
what
something that you
advisory
had
was
for a whole
for.
semester.
It was no, we had it for all 4 years.
All 4 years?
Yeah,
what
no,
did you even do?
It was all 4 years, and I believe on Thursdays, after first period, we all went to this classroom, all to a specific classroom, and everyone in there kind of, we got to know each other. The other thing is that these advisory homeroom-esque classes were most likely organized in a way where you would meet people who are also in other classes that you would also take. Me being in STEM green, I don't exactly remember what green stands for, but STEM is kind of
Green.
self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure green
My
was
man's favorite color. Nice.
it's my favorite color, but it was also an acronym for some program that was being run at our school concurrently with STEM. I think it had something to do with engineering for the sake of some kind of green, purpose, some kind of target purpose of, going into green engineering or some kind of green job.
Good, real engineering ending.
Fine.
Nevermore. There we
I
go.
will.
That's
I
what it
will look
stood
this
for.
up. Well, I have to keep everything in mind. Okay, green program.
Green.
Okay, let me see. What is it? Green academic program? Is that what I need to find? University Partners Green. I'm just.
Was your whole high school career a hoax? Is this a real organization?
Okay, let me just put it this way. I'm pretty sure the people who were in my advisory class were not in the green program. They were most likely in STEM. But
All right.
STEM and green were very, very much hand in hand related to each other, kind of
Yeah.
interconnected. Because they're both engineering, mathematics, technology, science major, or science programs. Kind of like being pre-med, except you're pre a bunch of these things possibly.
Yeah.
And so, everyone in my advisory class was of those classes, and a lot of the time what would happen is a lot of the people who were in my other classes were the same people who were in my advisory, because that's just how things work out. We're all part of like a certain subset of the student body, and so we're all just kind of thrown into the same classes, the same core classes, I suppose. And so that's what happened. And we had a bunch of those people in those classes alongside so I had a bunch of classes through high school with those same people. And when you have those kind of people, you have a very much a sort of bond with them. Of course, because you're in a lot of the same classes together, you get to talking with each other, you befriend each other, and it's only strengthened by the fact that you see each other every single day.
Yeah.
And so you formulate bonds. I
Yeah, and
guess.
some boy and some kid had a cowabummer because their real name was no longer their real name.
Yes, so back to that part of the story. So one of the kids I ended up becoming really good friends with, he immigrated here from China. And so, when it came to, the first day roll call, where they call out everyone's names,
Yeah.
him being from China, he's not from the part of China that has the, we also give you a Western name because that's just the kind of the convention that they have. If to my knowledge, it's mainly a Hong Kong thing, because Hong Kong having been, a English colony in the past, it has a lot of Western influences in it. And one of those being that a lot of people have both a Chinese name and a Western name. He wasn't from those parts. He was from somewhere else. And also, usually the people from Hong Kong have Cantonese names. He was Mandarin. He spoke Mandarin, and most likely his name was also in Mandarin. And so, when it came to the roll call for the first day, of course you go through all the names, and then you hit this name. And the teacher doesn't know how to pronounce it because it's not a name that they're familiar with. Yeah. Because, understandably, I guess. So, this is going to lead into another thing that I'm kind of curious about as to why this is. So the person tries to sound out the name, and this
fails miserably.
This honestly goes into a tangent. No, well, the thing is that he made one attempt, and then the guy kind of just knew that they were trying to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
And so they did it. This is going to lead me into another tangent about, why is it when people sound out names or words, they don't try to do it as the way that the letters are spelled and configured? They try to reconfigure and change the order of letters to get something that they can pronounce, and that becomes so weird to me.
I can speak from experience that that's generally not intentional. You just get lost in it. I do that with English words. Where if it's an English word that I completely have no idea what it is, and it's long, in my mind, I literally can't visualize the whole thing as, one succinct sound. So I have to separate it into sounds, and then it's a multi-step process, and I usually fuck one of them up. But as soon as I say it, I remember, connected, what I said, so then it's hard to unstick that.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, and probably as a young teenager, I had an inability to pronounce the word cinnamon. Because looking at the letters, it's a much more daunting task than it really is,
I realize, while thinking about this story, that it might have been a good idea to have Eric here, considering he's more experienced in Mandarin Chinese than I am. And he's much more experienced. He can actually read the damn language. I essentially operate completely off of pinyin phonetic or romanized spellings to know how things are supposed to kind of sound like.
You slowly encroach on what it really is.
You can thank Dynasty Warriors for that, because that is how I learned a lot of different ways. That's how I learned how to pronounce most
Can't
Chinese
believe my
sounds,
good friend Ryan
syllables.
speaks exclusively in Dynasty Warriors.
Technically it's not just Dynasty Warriors. They try really hard. I mean, I will post a certain number of games. They tried really hard to make sure that the pronunciations were somewhat accurate. This is to say that the kid in my class, and I think it's fine to say his name because, how the hell are you going to be able to spell it? Also, if high school people are watching, they're probably going to feel bad because or they might not feel bad at all because they're going to realize they mispronounced this guy's name completely incorrectly all throughout high school. So, the teacher, the teacher says the name Zhenzhao.
Yeah.
And so that is what my friend was known, that is the name that my friend went by through all of high school for 4 years. He was
because
known
that guy mispronounced it.
as Zhenzhao. No one knew he mispronounced it, though. I didn't even know he mispronounced it. In my mind, I thought his name was I kind of thought maybe if I was to take them, if it was mispronounced, if I was to take into account the fact that it was probably mispronounced, I can think of a romanized spelling that would probably result in that. I came to the conclusion of Zhen, Zhao, Zhenzhao, or if you were to say it in a more Dynasty Warriors accurate tone, Zhenjiao or Zhenjiao.
Yeah.
But I don't know when I saw his name on the register finally, but I remember getting really mad when I realized that everyone had been pronouncing his name wrong and he
Yeah.
had done nothing to correct anyone.
Maybe he
Um,
just thinks it's funny as shit.
I don't think he thought it was funny. I think he just
Yeah.
thought it was a lost cause. I was like, there's no point. People aren't going to be able to get it. It's too difficult for them.
Yeah. I couldn't. This is an unrelatable point for me. I mean, my name's Jacob.
Yeah.
That's literally the most common male name in America for my several surrounding years of birth. Um, but I imagine that going into like because like each year of elementary school, going into middle school, each different class of middle school, going into high school, each class of high school, it's probably a non-trivial affair every time. Maybe at a certain point you just don't give a shit, and maybe the person just thought like, oh, it's just this one class, I don't give a shit. But then it just somehow turned into every single class of
That's the
all of
thing,
high
though.
school.
I don't think it was something like that. I don't think it was like I don't give a shit. I'm not going to see these people all the time. It was more like he knew that it was most likely moot to try to pursue the correct pronunciation of his last name, of his name any further. Because, how are you going to get people to speak in a language or speak somewhat closely to a language that they've never experienced, right? And of
Yeah,
course, me being
It
the
is
outlier.
a bit of a thing.
Yeah. So once I saw the actual spelling of his name, so keep in mind the fact that all throughout his high school career, I don't even remember when I found out. It must have been early. I want to say the second or third year of high school. I finally, for some reason, got a hold of the class list, and I looked for and I found his name because it stands out. It's got two Z's in it, for crying
Yeah.
out loud. And I saw it, and I thought, wait a minute, his name isn't Zhenzhao. That's not even close to how his name is supposed to be pronounced. It's supposed to be Zunzuo, or something close to that. And he had never corrected anyone, and I remember when I started calling him that, he kind of pulled me aside, or we started talking about, like, he says, like, you're the only person in this entire you're the only person in this entire school that says my name correctly. And, you know, because, I want to make an effort, because, people deserve to be
Yeah.
called by the name that they are supposed to be called by, the way it's supposed to be pronounced, because then, I don't know, it might not be a crazy thing to some people, but if your name is mispronounced, you kind of feel like you lose a bit of yourself if that mispronunciation sort of, I don't know, chain reactions itself.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I guess, okay, going back to the fact that, you have a decently easy to pronounce common name. Your name is Jacob.
Yeah.
And so, but, all throughout, at least like elementary school, it kind of subsided once I went into secondary education. But when I was in elementary school, my last name is Santiago, right? A
Yeah.
lot of kids thought that my last name was pronounced San Diego.
Oh yeah.
And me,
Where in the world is Ryan San Diego?
no, that is not my name, although it is a much better name than whatever Phantom Thief name we came up for Eric that one episode that no one saw. But, yeah, I am. People thought my last name was.
Yeah.
Excuse me. People thought my last name was San Diego, and of course, me having a lot of pride in my name being pronounced correctly. This isn't a jab at my friend Zinzel, because, he. It's not like he had no pride. He was a very. But I'm just saying that me specifically, I wanted to act on it. I didn't think it was a lost cause, so I just went out and started saying whenever someone pronounced my name incorrectly, I said, it's not San Diego, it's Santiago. And they're like, okay. And, I mean, I don't know exactly what the reaction was to me correcting people. I think they probably just respected, oh, I'm sorry, I said your name incorrectly. But also they're kids, so I can imagine them just being like, no, you're San Diego. Freaking
Yeah,
got him, dumb. Like, like something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for the person whose name is being mispronounced, and there's a certain amount of it, like There's definitely personalities of people that have a way harder time speaking up about this sort of thing. And even if you like privately address the teacher of it, that's still you talking to someone who has authority over you. And then if they use that authority to distribute it between the class, it still is a lot of attention brought upon yourself, which is
Yeah.
something that a lot of people, not even in the context of just school, in everyday life, that's more attention than some personalities are comfortable with. So it can be a pretty challenging thing to get over. And you
Hmm.
needed a combination of things, like you needed you, who happened to see it written in the registry and had enough knowledge in the language to even like begin to think that that's a mispronunciation.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you have no knowledge of the language and you only hear a person of authority say it a certain way and then no correction happens. So it's an unfortunate combination of things.
It is. And I'm just. Honestly, I feel bad, but I don't know. I tried my best. I did it the way that I wanted to do, and I think I made him somewhat happy with the fact that I was able to do it. I'm pretty sure I also told him as well that the reason why I knew how to pronounce his name kind of correctly is because I had played Dynasty Warriors. And then I introduced him to Dynasty Warriors, and he loved it.
Dynasty Warriors fans,
It's it's a great series. I'm a fan of it. It's a great. I love it. Well, not the recent ones. Not 8. 9 is kind of terrible. But you know what? As a whole, I like just Three Kingdom stuff, and Dynasty Warriors is the reason that I got into Three Kingdom stuff. And maybe this anime that Eric posted will do that too. Even though Eric is not here, his actions have ripple through the podcast.
it's going
Even when he
forward
did
through,
it, yeah.
the
Why the?
influence.
I don't understand why this exists, but apparently there is an anime about Zhuge Liang, or Zhuge Kongming, as his style name is Kongming. But Zhuge Liang, I don't understand what the point of this anime is. It's just Zhuge Liang, except he's in modern day Tokyo.
He just got isekai, dude.
That's so stupid.
Got run over by a historically accurate truck.
I don't. On his deathbed, he dies. He dies like his normal life in the Three Kingdoms period, and then he was sent straight to modern day Tokyo. That's real dumb. Why? I mean, I haven't watched it, but I can just imagine that I'm not going.
You
to
already
like
know
it.
it's dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb. I don't know. I'm not
Damn.
going to watch it. There were some other anime that I definitely watched. Well, I guess we're going to steer away from the language thing. But you know what? It's fine. We segued into this other thing, and we talked about the other thing for like at
Yeah,
least
talk
20
about whatever
minutes.
the hell you want, man.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is all about. Break time, we just talk about what we want because we can do that. It's not exactly a recent series. Although I'm interested in one that has surfaced and the first episode came out recently called Spy Family.
Spy Family. I've heard people
Yeah.
talk about that one. I haven't seen anything about it.
The manga, a lot of people like the manga, and people are saying that, oh my god, these voice actors are perfect. I can't believe how perfect it is. And
Yeah?
of course, I'm not going
For
to
the
watch
sub or
it
the
till
dub?
it's- I'm pretty sure the sub, the Japanese.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one looks really good. I think it's a combination of it's some kind. I think it's supposed to be some
It's like
kind
a
of
comedy, right?
I think it's supposed to be a comedy, because the premise of the show is that there is some spy. He's known by his code name Twilight.
Oh yeah, Twilight
And-
in the house. Oh,
and-
literally in the house.
Yeah, and he's doing some kind of espionage mission. There's like 2 different countries, and he's supposed to go into the other one and do some kind of espionage mission in which he's supposed to either get information or assassinate some higher-ranking official of the country that his country opposes. But the only way to do that is to enroll a child at the same private school as his target's child and get in through there. But in order to do that, the school requires that both parents be present at the enrollment or something. But the thing is that he works alone, so he has to find someone to be his wife, and he has to find a child. And so that comprises your main cast. He is a spy, and
And the acquired family.
his acquired family, yes. His wife, unbeknownst to him, is an assassin
Damn.
I'm not entirely sure which side the assassin's on. And also, they find a daughter who is in an orphanage, and it turns out that the child was apparently some kind of science experiment and has the ability to read minds.
Cool.
So I think the comedy ensues because the child knows that neither of the quote unquote parents know that the child, her name is Anya, can read minds. And so the child knows everything that's going on. The child knows that her adoptive dad is a spy and knows that her adoptive mother is an assassin. And I think that's where the hilarity ensues.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so that seems interesting. And because I had been watching clips of trailers for that series, I found a clip for another anime series that I watched to completion since last podcast because I liked it so much and I can't believe there isn't more. And also it came out 5 years ago. Or 6 years ago. Coming on to 6 years. It's called Amama to Inazuma, or Sweetness and Lightning. And that one was really good. I really liked it.
I haven't even heard of that one.
It's a good one. I recommend it. It's about an ordinary school teacher who has a 3-year-old daughter, and prior to the story, 6 months prior to the beginning of the series, his wife dies. And so,
oh, I looked it up. I've seen the screenshots and stuff from this.
His daughter, Tsumugi, is very, very adorable, and also she's what I can think of as the best representation of how a child would actually act in all of anime.
That's one thing that, no offense to the medium, but I don't feel like anime usually writes people that actually remind me in any way of actual people.
Yeah, that's kind of the joke that a lot of people have. There's some various YouTube videos of like real life versus anime, and I didn't really like. There was like one video by these two guys that did a real life interaction of like a normal person versus an anime person. And it usually just ended up that the person who was the anime person was the edgy loner type. And that's not what I expected it to be.
I don't even mean that. I mean that I have a similar gripe with like Hollywood movies is no one speaks or thinks like people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do I put it? It's like someone sits down at a dinner table and like there's a conversation with a family, and it's like that is not how people talk.
There are some that are kind of...
Yeah, I mean, there's
like
exceptions to it, but a lot of them are really, really not.
Yeah.
Especially older ones.
Mm-hmm. Because you gotta create the good American family unit, I think is a big part of a lot of those media, is that you have to have the perfect family. The dad works, the mom stays home and cooks, and she's submissive to a certain degree, although, however, when it comes to rearing the children, she's not afraid to put her foot down, and the kids are rowdy. One of them is smart, the other one is an idiot, and
True.
and
I mean, you even think about like these adult comedies that are like harken for how real and like just how they're just people, you know?
Like
and,
a family
and every
sitcom?
one of these friendships is like a group of 3 people. One of them is the cool person who does whatever, and one person is the one who is weird, and then there's 2 other people who do nothing but make fun of the weird one, and then there's like awkward occasional laughs, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah,
This isn't how a group of people works.
Well, argument. First of all, I think that it's the easiest and it's the best dynamic to have 3 people in a conversation or in a friend group at any given time. It's a good dynamic so that the conversation isn't just between 2 people, so that everyone can kind of chime in on it. You might notice that that's kind of like why there are 3 people, usually, on this podcast, because, you know, I think that all of us together create a certain dynamic, and it's definitely, I don't know if we fill those character roles of the thing, but we seem pretty close. But I think it has something to do with it being, it's easy to write 2-person interactions or 3-person interactions, I think is how it goes. Because if you go any higher than that, then suddenly it's not a single conversation happening, it's two different conversations happening more often than not. Or that's how it would seem to be in the real world. Like, imagine if we had 4 people on here, that would get kind of... I think that would get kind of hectic and crazy.
That'd be great.
I don't know if I would like that, because I think, hey, you know what? I have a really hard time when you and Eric just are talking at the same time, because I can't hear either of you, and I'm pretty sure that neither of you hear the other person.
Oh, yeah.
So if we had
Gotta fight for screen time.
If you had a 4th person also doing that, the entire thing would be completely illegible. We would not be able to hear what anyone is saying at all.
No, that just means that there's a re-listen value.
I guess.
And listening to it several times. The first listen, you listen to everything Eric says. Then the second time you listen to everything I say. And it's like 2 podcasts in one.
No, it's not.
That's just a greater experience.
Is it really? It just means that we can't hear each other, but that's the nature of doing it remotely. But we can't really help that.
Yeah.
But the family sitcom, the friends are usually like, yeah, the guy, like, I don't know, the dad has his 2 friends or something.
Yeah, it's like, how do I put it? A lot of sitcoms, the entire basis of their plot or their comedy or their drama or whatever are on the people and the relationships between the people. But then I look at the people and it's entirely just like, it is that character. There's so few bullet points to that character, And then a lot of these shows boil down to the exact same thing because almost all the characters are the same to all the other characters in a different sitcom. It's like half the characters are just compromised as one-liners,
Yeah, they need to. There's a.
It's like there's 2 interesting characters in everything. Like I think about there was a sitcom that I remember watching some of years ago. That was How I Met Your Mother.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like the whole basis of the show is it's like a dude who dicks around in everyday life.
Yeah.
And he tries to pick up a girl repeatedly. And then at the end
Barney,
of every episode, there's a different thing.
Barney
that is how he succeeds. No, the main character.
Oh, you're talking about Ted.
And then the moral of the story is like, and that's how I met your mother, because the random girl that he tried to pick up, and I think her name was Robin, always eventually goes for him, and that's how they met. It's like different versions of the fiction.
That is not how the end of the show goes. Spoilers. Robin is not
each
the mother.
Individual episode.
Yeah, but I don't think he ends every episode with saying it. That's
a lot of them do.
I don't believe that's correct.
Am I totally wrong?
I'm pretty sure.
Either way, from my surface level knowledge, apparently, of the show, like there's one guy, Barney.
Yes.
It's like every time there's a weird thing that happens in the episode, it's him doing it. It's like he's the character that gets multiple bullet points.
Yeah. Of course, his bullet points range into the cartoony.
Yeah. It's like you have primarily a bunch of adults who are doing nothing but filling the screen, occasionally making fun of each other, and doing nothing, or just talking about where the plot's going. And then you have Barney, who's just like an actual Flintstones character, who's just in the show occasionally, or occasionally is the entire episode. It's so
he does. I think he has the most depth, kind of.
Yeah, he has the most depth just because it's like, I feel like they actually made him a character.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
Yeah, that tends to happen. But I guess what happens is there's a bunch of things that could possibly result in that. It's either that a character becomes really popular, so they want to give that character more stuff. That could be a bad thing, though, if it ends up ruining the character. But if you're good with it, usually the characters that become the most popular are the ones that get more screen time because you want to see them more, so they get to do more stuff. The other thing is that I feel like the reason why he's so stand out is because he is grounded by the other characters who are kind of more grounded in reality versus Barney Stinson.
Because it's like there's like episodes where like three of the friends are hanging out at a bar, and they're talking about like how work was really annoying and how their boss was a dick. And then the moral of like this little mini story that's happening is, well, maybe you should have a conversation with their boss. They have a conversation. It goes badly. It's funny. Boss bad guy. And then, like, during this episode, one of them comments, "Where's Barney?" And then he's just doing a marathon. And then it's like, about that. It's like, what is this?
Meanwhile, yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. That is what happens because there's something about that kind of format where everyone is kind of doing. I think it's cool because I guess in a way everyone's doing their own thing. I think in later seasons, I'm not entirely sure because it's been so long since I've seen How I Met Your Mother. But when like Marshall and Lily and Robin and Ted are all doing their own thing, you get this it's a cool little dichotomy of like, oh yeah, these are all people just living their life separate from each other. Like they're friends, but they don't spend every waking moment with each other, which I think is interesting. And the fact that, and of course, like what happens is a lot of the things that Barney does is in response to something that someone else says, hence why one of his catchphrases is challenge accepted.
Yeah.
But that's kind of an interesting thing about the show is where they're all living their own life. They all do their own thing, and then in some cases, in some occurrences, their lives intersect, and the things that one person says or the things that they do in their own life impact the things that the other people are doing. And that's why I kind of think it's a decent show.
Yeah, no, I'm saying this not to give the impression that I think it's a bad show. It's just the characters in it really are not people.
Not really.
And it's fine, but I think it's very interesting when I get the impression that characters in a show actually are human-like.
But that feels like what every character in a sitcom or any sort of media should attempt to, or should strive for, right? Is being as believable as possible. To be convinced that this character is a real person. And some are just better at it than others, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's a lot of entertaining shows where none of them are at all like people, but I think very few shows have any characters, or maximum one character that's like a person.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it hard for me to think about a piece of media for a long amount of time after watching it if none of them were people. Like, I enjoyed my time watching How I Met Your Mother, but half of the characters are just like weird one-liner or comeback machines, which when watching the show is interesting, but I can only think of like actual bullet points that the characters are instead of like a real personality.
Yeah, they're more of a culmination of their gags versus a culmination of the various characteristics that they have expressed. I totally get that. So going on to something that's kind of similar, have you seen the trailer for How I Met Your Father?
No, I didn't even know that existed.
I just watched the trailer for it because I was curious. It does not seem good at all. I heard there was a couple rumors that I heard about the show where it took almost I don't know. I want to say it took a decade for the show to get greenlit, and that immediately is a red flag. Also, the trailer, it also felt like in the trailer that it was supposed to be just a giant compilation of a bunch of millennial jokes or something like that. The online dating aspect and being on Tinder was a very weird thing that I definitely cringed at. And I did not like how it was going at all. It definitely felt bad.
Yeah, that doesn't sound great.
It wasn't, I don't think. I don't even remember I don't even remember exactly what was in there, but I just remember not liking it. It was just so weird to me.
Yeah, because I think about comedies where I actually like and occasionally think about the characters, like Futurama comes to mind. Because while there are many characters who are nothing but a gag, there's several of them which have enough defining moments that they almost feel like a person. Of course, the show's primarily episodic, so a lot of it is just wiped every time. It's a similar situation to like Rick and Morty, I suppose, where for the vast majority of the time the characters are completely not characters, but there's the occasional episode that breathes humanity into them, and you like remember it.
Yeah. And is that the reason why people are kind
I
of
think
all...
that's the reason why people love Rick and Morty is because they come for the edgy humor and how the voice acting is very good. They
Mhm.
speak in an entertaining way. Um, and then like there's the occasional very serious, down to earth humanity esque episode that while since it's episodic, absolutely none of it is like it's all wiped at the end of the episode, you know. So there's
Yeah.
no ramifications for like a character dying or going through depression or anything like that. And I think that's the strength of episodic shows, is they can do a very heavy topic that ends in a very serious way. But then the next episode just going back to being a lighthearted comedy. So it's up for debate if that even made the character more of a character. It's more like here's a hypothetical situation that this person could have gone through to show more depth than they otherwise could, which is very interesting.
That makes me think of it as just, oh yeah, here's like this moment is what I guess, a character's personality or whatever troubles they're battling with can be made up of just moments in which they just
Yeah.
show it, and that is a valid way of representing a character's innermost thoughts or
Because if you
their
think
innermost
about it,
troubles.
an episodic show is more about the characters than the plot. That's just all it is.
Yeah. That's how a lot of I want to say that that's how I prefer a lot of my entertaining or my a lot of my
Episodic?
entertainment. No, not episodic, but more character centric
Oh,
rather
character
than plot.
rather than plot driven?
Yeah, character driven rather than plot driven. There, of course, I think having an overarching plot is also pretty good. I just
I
don't
think
think it should be the
overarching
main
plot
focus.
has advantages and disadvantages. I think something episodic is brilliantly designed for the TV audience because you get about as much enjoyment if you watch only completely random episodes. But if you go through, like as a decision, wanting to watch all of the shows in order, then it has a worse effect in a lot of cases. Some of them hold up for sure. Like I think about what's the show? Space Cowboy, the anime.
It's Cowboy Bebop.
Wait, Space Dandy. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Space Dandy. I guess Bebop is kind of similar. Though
It's
I like
episodic.
Though I like Bebop a lot less.
Mhm.
Oh,
Oh no, is this a hot take? Anyway, continue.
is not thinking Bebop is the best thing in the world a hot take?
I think so. I honestly, I've been interested in watching it. I haven't though. I watched like one episode and I kind of just didn't anymore because I just felt like doing something
Oh
else.
yeah,
I'm sure it's good, but I just haven't.
but
gotten to
like
it.
with Space Dandy, it's like this weird, almost psychedelic sci-fi theme. Bunch of different episodes. They get random animators to do different episodes, so all of them feel pretty different.
Mhm.
And there's all these extreme situations, like there's one episode where there's a giant intergalactic, race for $1 billion, and it's showing characters sacrificing friends and making tough decisions about how much they care about the race for the infinity amount of money.
Mhm.
And then they, in the end, sacrifice everything and win, but then they're depressed. But it's episodic, so it doesn't matter, But it's a very
yeah.
interesting... It's a very interesting what would the character do for a reward of infinity,
Yeah.
Um, that's a good example of what I think of with that, is you could have an extreme situation. I think it lends itself to sci-fi, because you could feasibly do something ridiculous and extreme.
That's another point of contention, I think, though, is that if the things that a person has done in previous episodes don't carry over to future episodes, that's when episodic kind of breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
Because suddenly the character isn't learning anything, and they're just being put in situations, as
Yeah.
opposed to their past actions or the things or their past experiences impact what they
There's like no
experience or
character.
do in the future.
That's the hard part, is you need a very interesting character to begin with, because if there's absolutely no character development, the character unit needs to begin interesting.
Yeah. And that's to say, if previous episodes in which, to take this example, I haven't watched Space Dandy either, but say that this person's decisions impact the way that other characters look at them, but then suddenly it's completely absolved because the next episode has no
Yeah.
ramification, or experiences no ramifications due to the content of the previous episode, then I think it kind of breaks down.
You think it breaks down?
Yeah, because even though it has an episodic nature, there should still be some amount of the characters, if that's
Some
the point
continuity.
of it. Some continuity, some amount of the characters are learning from the things they previously did, so
Yeah.
that stuff doesn't happen again. I think is very, very.
I don't know. I think there's occasional continuity, but occasional non-continuity. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it to actually analyze what actually consists or persists between episodes. That's All right, here's my atomic take. We were talking about Cowboy Bebop, right? It was I think Cowboy Bebop, the episodic show, as a whole, is not very good.
Okay.
I think it looks very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it touches on very mature themes that very few shows ever talk about or go to.
Okay.
It has very good music. But there's like 4 interesting episodes, and it's a full season. Because it's like a very serious plot. It seems very character-driven. But then almost every episode is the gang drops by on a city, they go, "We're out of money!" And then they go through a city, and then they try to steal something, they get caught, they lose all of their money, and then they, hear about a crime, they're bounty hunters, they catch the criminal, they turn him in, they get a money pouch, they go back to the ship, they open the money pouch, there's no money. Damn, we're depressed. And then the episode ends. And that's like most of the episodes.
The thing is that I am not the person. I cannot say anything one way or the other. I have not watched the entire series.
Yeah, my atomic take is the episodic series is not very good, but I think the movie is very good.
Okay.
It's weird because you watch the episodic show and there's 4 very good episodes that convince you the whole thing is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And the music is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love it.
I see. I realized that I was talking about Amama to Inazuma, and I didn't say anything about it, but I feel like we're already so far along that, bringing it up is just kind of going to put a wrench in whatever flow we have, and I've already done it, so this is kind of bad.
I can't believe my man just threw a wrench in the conversation.
Well, I don't know. We're talking about anime. Maybe we can harken back to it.
Yeah,
I'm not a person who can really say anything about Cowboy Bebop. I guess I'll have to make the judgment for myself whenever I eventually get around to watching it.
I think it's worth watching, just off of its historical value.
Okay. I will keep that in mind. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about the show that I watched and liked that came out 5-ish years ago. Yeah, oh yeah, we were talking about, like, the representation of characters, and that's how we got off of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Ama Matu Inazuma is about a widower father and his 3-year-old daughter. And in the wake of his wife's sudden death due to an unknown illness, he's a school teacher, and I think one of the big plot points is that he can't exactly cook, and so his daughter for the last 6 months, presumably, has been surviving off of convenience store bento.
No.
And, she seems to be not getting a whole lot of... She seems to not be enjoying it a whole lot. And as an idea, of course, he's trying to make his daughter happy, as a dad probably should try to do for their kid. He eventually tries to take up the basics of cooking in order to make home-cooked meals for his daughter. And it becomes an entire plot, and that's what every single episode is about he meets this girl who goes to his high school, who goes to the high school he teaches at. She's in the class that he teaches, and they try to set up a thing, and there's an entire point about him trying to make sure it's not seen as something improper. He definitely tries to schedule and put down a couple ground rules, and so that it's not some weird, suspicious thing. He definitely what's the word? He makes it very obvious that he wants it to make sure that nothing is misconstrued, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, he goes to learn how to cook let's see. The daughter doesn't know how to cook, but her mother is some celebrity chef who is hardly home because she's very busy being a celebrity chef. And so she essentially writes down recipes for them to make every time they do this gathering thing. And of course his daughter is there because, she's supposed to be the person that he's cooking for, so why wouldn't she be there to eat some of the food? And so it's a very adorable series. It's a very heartwarming series about, a dad just trying to be a good dad to his child and learning how to cook. And also there's an adorable kid who actually acts like a real normal kid.
Real kid goes, yummy food.
Yummy food.
Food.
It's great. She's irrational, just like a kid would be. She throws tantrums. It's such a, I don't
really
understand.
Feels like a kid.
It does. And I don't understand. I mean, I guess there's a couple reasons why, because then you have
most kids are annoying.
Yeah, they are. And even though she has her adorable moments, there are also times when she's like, God, she's just such a little shit. But that's how a kid is sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's great. I enjoyed watching that series so much, and it was very heartwarming. And I liked the relationship that this dad has with his daughter. It's so good, and I can't believe there isn't a second season of it 5 years later.
Yeah, maybe you just need to read it. I don't know. If there is more, I don't know.
There is more. Apparently, people have been talking about the ending of it, and the ending is the daughter going off to college. Is the dad seeing his daughter off to college?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it was so good, and I loved it. It was such a wonderful series, and of course, I don't know how to describe it, but it was just nice. And I'm really glad that there weren't any romantic undertones between any characters.
Yeah, that's nice.
Because
I think it's good when a show that has no seeming original intent to be romantic.
Yeah.
Suddenly becoming a romance is kind of strange.
That's something that has happened in a lot of shows that I just don't like, is when characters are suddenly into each other.
Yeah.
It feels like it just comes out of nowhere, where you're like, wait a minute, they were just being friendly with each other. What the heck is up with this? Suddenly I'm just madly in love with you.
I thought there really could just be a male and a female lead that didn't end up in a romance.
I'm okay with it as long as it's built up properly. There needs to be some kind of establishing thing. Even something as simple as, they were childhood friends, but she's liked him the entire time, is better than, they're friends and now suddenly they like each other a lot.
Yeah, there was
there needs to be that information that preceded the series, or the build-up of the relationship should occur over the course of the series.
Yeah, I remember I read this point somewhere. I think it originated from a comic strip in regards to potential for a piece of media ever having a lesbian relationship in it. But it was a comment on about how shallow female characters in most media is. This is written many years ago, and where it was even worse than it is now. Where I still don't think it's excellent in most media. It was the amount of shows that never have a conversation between two women, not in regards to a man.
Well, that's all that girls talk about. if media has taught me anything, is that girls talk to each other about one of two things. It's either boys.
Astounding.
They talk about either one of two things to each other: boys and possible prospects, and the size of their boobs. That is the only two things that girls are allowed to discuss with each other.
That's the only thing. Yeah, you hear those. My reaction is I hear those prerequisites, and I'm like, that's such an easy prerequisite to think, because I'm thinking in context of real life, not in media. Mm-hmm. But then I watch one piece of media, and I'm like, holy shit, it never happened.
Hey, did you see Jimmy walking out of the gym today? Jimmy Jim? Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Jimmy?
I'm thinking especially in Hollywood movies. There's two scenes in the entire movie that is woman to woman with no man in the scene, and both of them are talking about a dude.
Oh my god.
It's like, oh my, what happened?
Really? I can't believe that. I mean, actually, no, I can believe that, but I just can't. It's inconceivable to me that that is,
Yeah, it's astounding.
a convention, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's just something about how consciousness and writers, and I guess skewed writer demographic,
Mm-hmm.
works out, because there's another good one that in a group of people, if at least a third of the people are women, so still majority men think it's half and half.
Men think it's half and half. Half and half what?
Half men, half women in the group. They perceive the group that they're in as half women if a third of the people are women.
So they think that women have a greater
presence.
Yeah.
Or they just think an equal amount is less. I don't know. It's just something about how counting works. I don't know. I don't know if it works in reverse.
I'm down.
These are all random points I feel like I've read once in my life that I have no source for.
Honestly, while thinking about, taking this all into account, I'm thinking about our fighting game. Honestly, to bring it back to something that is supposed to be what we're not talking about.
Will this be the first time on the podcast that we've ever talked about fighting games?
Might be. But this is, I think it is. We've never talked about it before. Maybe we will in the future as well. But I'm just thinking about this in terms of, like, our fighting game. Of course we have, because that's, like, a thing, is that I wanted it to be, I mean, I wasn't consciously trying to distill or trying to, diffuse these tropes, right? I was just like, I'm just gonna make the thing.
You just made whatever characters are interesting, and you're more interested in more female characters.
Well, I wouldn't. Well, that makes me sound like I'm some kind of lech.
I mean that in a literal sense. I don't mean that in any kind of connotation.
Yeah, the way that most other people on the internet are interested in female characters, but that's not me. But yeah, and the thing is that my beliefs on creating a female character, I guess we can talk about various character writings. The creation of a strong female protagonist, I feel like in most popular media, there's like a certain line, and it usually has to do with the fact that the female character cannot have any sort of romantic interest at all, because then they become perceived as weak, or something like that. Or there's like something about that where if they're supposed to be strong, they can't be bogged down by feelings. Or some dumb thing like that. And so with that, I want to create a female protagonist that is what I think is better than that. Because the other thing is that a lot of strong female protagonists tend to always be this thing. They're always silent, they're always stoic, nothing ever phases them, and they're just strong for no reason. And in some cases, they're just Mary Sues, which is, well, not a big fan of it, because if everything comes easy, then why bother? Why, if there's no struggle, if everything is just about being a power fantasy, then why even engross yourself? And so that's where Achilles comes in, and I think I've struck a decent balance. I'd like to hope, with Achilles, where, well, I mean, she's obviously, she's strong, physically. If people who know about us have seen this character that we're talking about, she's definitely strong to start, and the various personality and character beats that I want to hit with her. I want to say that I can do. I don't know if I'm doing it better, but I'd like to think that I can do it better. And there's just so many, I want it to be like, having a character that is more than just a female character that is deeper than, I guess, what this person.
Oh yeah, you want a lot of bullet points.
Yeah, and then the thing about how from a man's perspective, if the group is a third female, they think of it as 50% female. I mean, I don't know. When I heard that, I kind of thought about the roster essentially for this game, and I don't know. I've made it strictly equal, but I was definitely thinking about that, because, you want to be able to have a variety of personalities and a variety of different identities,
Yes.
I guess. And the way, and they, of course, everything's kind of equal down the line. They're equal amounts for the most part of everything. And then I started thinking about other fighting game rosters. And I guess that is kind of the case. Because, with the exception of Dead or Alive, which is a completely different topic, most fighting game rosters are majority male, and honestly to me, I cannot understand why that is.
I don't know.
The thing, maybe it's just my own sort of character conception kind of, mindset. But for the most part, a lot of male characters that I see aren't that interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot harder for me to think of a really interesting male design. But for some reason it's easy to do to think of a female one. Which is odd. I don't know if that speaks to what kind of personality or what kind of mindset or ulterior motive I have.
Shady guy Ryan.
No, I'm not. I'm just, I don't know why. But I don't know if it's just easier because, it's never been done, or simply making someone female makes them more interesting. Is that a possibility? Because a character can't, because I don't know, does making a character female just give them whatever, baseline depth they have even deeper simply because they're female? What the heck is happening? But I don't want to think that that's the case.
I don't know. There's more to it than that for sure. Part of it for me is I find a lot of female characters interesting just because it's a point of view I don't have. It is a different person. There's different connotations, and it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, but
in games where I digitally represent a different character, I do get a lot of enjoyment out of being someone very different than myself.
Yeah, my Elden Ring character that I am playing as, or have been playing as, but haven't played recently, is female. But the thing is that I'm not fantasizing, oh man, what if I was, I'm just thinking, man, she's so cool!
Oh, yeah,
I'm honestly just thinking.
Cool samurai with sword.
Yeah, I'm not thinking, oh man, I'm so cool because I'm embodying this character. It's honestly more like, man, I am sitting here and I'm controlling her and she is cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Honestly what it feels like. It's not like a fantasy thing, I'm just kind of... It's weird because obviously I am playing as her, but I feel like I'm just watching her do cool stuff, as opposed to I'm doing the cool stuff through her.
Yeah, that's fairly similar to how I think I feel about this sort of thing.
Yeah. And I'm wondering why a lot of fighting game rosters aren't balanced that way, or aren't, equal in either gender identity, I suppose. I'm wondering why a bunch
how
of
it
them
works.
are male.
I think of the roots of it being Street Fighter. Maybe it's just easier for this entirely or very overwhelmingly male development team to imagine a male doing fighting. The other thing is historically the documented successful fighters throughout history and in different cultures are generally male.
They are, yeah.
So maybe it's just source material originally from how they see the world of street fighters, or whatever that means, the world warriors,
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's other fighting games seeing Street Fighter as the recipe book.
Well, then you have Dead or Alive. But Dead or Alive is, I think, the only fighting game that Dead or Alive and Skullgirls are the only two fighting games that I know of that have only two major fighting games. I'm sure there's a lot of Kusoge that have a mostly female roster, if not completely. Yeah. But if we're talking about major, somewhat mainline, Dead or Alive is on that cusp because people can't take it seriously because of the sexualization. But those are the only two games that I can think of that have a majority female roster. And in the case of Skullgirls, it has to do with the plot. Also, it might just be like, hey, cute girls are cute and cute girls are cool, so most of them are going to be girls. In the case of Dead or Alive, it's because, hey, look at all of these sexy girls, as opposed to, we're trying to go for equal or decent or good representation of female characters.
Yeah, the pessimistic side of me wants to say that in again, sounding like a broken record, primarily male dev team, that you could just think of less interesting female characters than interesting male characters.
Yeah, but in my case, it's the opposite. It's
Yep.
really hard for me to think of a cool male character. I mean, there are three that I have currently that are okay, and a lot of the other ones tend to be female. I've tried to keep the ratio equal though for the most part, which is honestly difficult. But there are some male designs that I've thought of that have become much more interesting in my eyes. I just haven't drawn them. I don't know what they look like.
Yeah.
I have like a decent idea, but it could be interesting. But it took a lot of time before I came up
It
with
comes
another
less
one.
naturally to you, I suppose.
I guess. And it carries over to other games because I see a lot of the male designs in, say, Street Fighter. The other thing is that a lot of Street Fighter designs, especially like recent Street Fighter designs, regardless, I haven't been super interested in.
What, you're not saying Luke is the coolest character
Luke
ever made?
is the most milquetoast character that Street Fighter has ever produced. Also,
What if we made a guy who's a boxer? Wow.
There are two other guys who are boxers.
But Luke is blonde hair. I don't know.
He's an MMA. That's the other thing is that there are way too many blondies in Street Fighter. It's like the only people they think that come from America are blue-eyed, blonde-haired white dudes.
That's the stereotype.
Yeah. Ken's got a pass because he dyes his hair and also he's got brown eyes and he's half Japanese, but that's a different story. That's because so that he'll be appealing to a Japanese crowd. But the fact that you already have Guile, and Charlie Nash also fits that description. I'm a fan of Charlie Nash, though. I think he's super cool. Guile, Charlie Nash, Ed is another character who has blonde hair, blue eyes. Cammy's cool too, though, so I can't really say anything about Cammy. So, I don't know. There's so many blonde-haired characters in Street Fighter. I don't like it. I don't know. Why are they all there? Why is this the only representation that America's allowed to get? Why isn't it always a white dude? But
It's just what all of America is, dude.
No, it's not.
100%.
No, but
White, blue eyes, blonde hair. I mean, all three of us live in America.
you're right.
We're that. This just didn't. It happened right now.
You just got blonde hair and blue eyes?
Yep.
Oh no, wait.
Same with you.
Mine is also blonde.
When did it happen?
What the heck? It just turned blonde.
Yeah, shit, dude.
Now our avatars are not accurate to our real world appearances anymore.
That's super unfortunate.
Oh my god. How'd this happen? Is this what happens when you live in America?
It's just what happens when you live in America.
This sucks. I hate this. Just like I hate
Alright.
most of those Street Fighter characters.
Well, we'll probably need some time to think about how now we're all real Americans. So I think we're out of time as we need to re-examine our identities. But you can watch or listen to us every Sunday live at Twitch TV, Shatterpoint Games, starting at 2:30 p.m. PST. If you can't make it, it's recorded. New episodes go up on Monday, 12 p.m. PST, your favorite podcasting platform, YouTube, you know, the works. Follow us on Twitter, ShadowPointGS if you want. Join us next week whenever. All right, break time over.